You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, Fambase Sports. Join Jarek Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.
Welcome back to Fambase Sports. My name is Jarek Hall with my co-host Kari Demos. So we are back here again with another Buffalo Fambase production for you guys here today. So we're going to recap a couple things, guys. We're going to recap the preseason. We're also going to have our reaction to the college football AP poll since that kind of came out. So we'll kind of go in there, discuss about that, especially for the hardcore college football fans that are in the chat. And then we got some more things to talk about. LeBron James, Bryce. You look at Bryce, his son Bronny. Incredible moment that every father would love to see. So we're definitely going to be talking about that and some more sports information, sports topics. We'll get into all of that. But man, oh man, Kari, man, you weren't here last week, man. So we definitely kind of miss you, man. What's been going on with you, man? And just kind of how you feeling?
Yeah, things are good, man. Just moved to Rochester, so getting myself settled over here. Glad to be back with y'all and good to check in. And it's a crazy time in sports. There's a lot of different things going on. NFL preseason going on. I know we're in the midst of baseball season, but college football training camps are going. And AP polls just came out, so that's a big topic to discuss. But yeah, there's a lot going on, so I'm just excited to be back with you. How's everything over there?
Man, everything's smooth, man. Everything's smooth for the most part. Last week, for the most part, we had some people kind of come up and just kind of give their insights, stuff like that. It was kind of a fun time debating with some other people. My boy Brock, he was part of the stream last week. He's in the chat now. He's doing his thing. But man, looking at the chat right now, man. Like I said, we got Brock, we got Troy, we got my boy Michael. He's in here. And shout out to Apex, man. Apex does a lot of good work. I definitely highly recommend anybody to kind of check him out. Him and Tommy from Mafia Sports Report. These guys are always kind of doing their thing. Shout out to Apex. Make sure to check them out. They are a huge part of the fan base community. Shout out to my boy Apex for that, man. And shout out to Tommy as well, man. Like I said, if he stops by, or check him out. He does freaking incredible content and incredible projects that we're all kind of working with him. But yeah, man, Brock is in the building. Huge time. Shout out to him as well. Again, and Brock, I swear we're going to talk about AP rankings. We're going to get into that. So, but I guess we'll start off the show, kick it off with the NFL preseason because that was definitely a huge time. Finally, football is back. Well, football is back. We got the USFL, but you know what I mean. We got the NFL preseason. That is back. So, man, just kind of give me your thoughts about who were some of the players that kind of impressed you, whether they're rookies or not. Like, what are some of the takeaways that you saw from the week one of preseason?
Yeah, a lot of action. I think that there was a lot of, it's always tough this time because, there's those vets that, we're not going to see a ton of those guys this time of year. Some guys that are resting up for the, loads of snaps they're going to have during the season. But a few guys that really stood out to me, I'm going to stick with the rookies here. I'll say this. One veteran that really stood out to me was Tyler Huntley. You want to talk about season and opportunity. He did his thing last season at the end of the year, playing for the Ravens. When Lamar Jackson was out with his ankle injury, he was a pretty solid prospect coming out of Utah. But I really think he's exceeded a lot of people's expectations. So I'm really excited to see what he was able to put together. But also too, just going to the rookies. There were a few rooks that really stood out to me. Sticking with the quarterback position, Malik Willis. What a showing he had. Being able to move, show off his legs, but showing that he, can get it done in the pocket. And, obviously, I'm not saying that I'm expecting him to take the reins over for Ryan Tannehill this year, but, he's definitely coming down the line. Sticking on the offensive side of the ball as well, really wanted to highlight, and we've been talking, this guy's been getting, the buzz for him has been generating all throughout camp. And I'll even, highlight just the fact that he went to the perfect situation because these guys, these receivers come into this organization and just continuously thrive. And that's George Pickens, man. George Pickens, every dog fan out there knows just how, no pun intended, how much of a dog he is. But the fact that he fell just because of injury, and Georgia had historically has had ups and downs with really being able to produce offensively, in college. But a lot of those guys have gone on to be stars in the league. AJ Green, Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, the list goes on. So it's it really has been amazing to see what George Pickens has put together throughout camp, but he continued to show it in the matchup against the Seahawks. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is, I was really wrong. I might be wrong, in what I said about him in the spring. Talking about another former dog, Trayvon Walker. He's really showed up. I think he's really, silenced a lot of doubters like myself and others out there. He's shown and proved that he can play at this level. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. For that Jags front four and front seven. Having another dynamic pass rusher opposite of him and Josh Allen. So, for you, Jarek, who are some of the guys that really stood out to you this weekend in preseason action?
Yeah, man. So I think one of the players I think that obviously, definitely is in the headlines is probably Trey Lance. I feel like Trey Lance for the most part. And it's only because, again, he's competing. Well, not really competing, but that's a guy that really has to showcase, that he really is the guy. Because, this is kind of one of those these rare situations where a quarterback is just sidelined simply just because they want the younger talent. They want to see what the younger talent has to see whether it's a franchise quarterback or not. I think the last quarterback that we've probably seen go through this. Trevor Lawrence kind of did with the Jaguars a little bit. But he was the starter from day one. Baker Mayfield had to kind of deal with that issue for a little bit with Tyrod until, obviously we got into the, some, early portions of the season. That's when Baker Mayfield was able to take over, but he didn't really win the initial job for Tyrod. But Trey was, he came into this right through training camp and he says, listen, no, you're the guy. They brought Jimmy Garoppolo in and he didn't really do anything to lose the job. They just wanted to see what Trey Lance can do. And we kind of, we talked about it before and I kind of gave my input about it that I'm just like, I think that competition is going to make players better. I think that breeds to making better players. But Trey Lance was given the job and he actually had a pretty good day. Him and Gray was a pretty good dynamic duo. You kind of saw the arm strength and the arm talent about Trey Lance and just kind of the size about him that, obviously a lot of people compared him to Josh Allen for a reason. So, obviously under that Kyle Shanahan offense, and then you just kind of look at the weapons surrounding him going into the season. Trey Lance is going to have he's going to have a great opportunity. He's got a great offensive line. He's got one of the best tight ends in the league. He has one of the best receivers in the National Football League. He's got a great ground game. So I'm excited to see where Trey Lance can do because again, Jimmy Garoppolo was good enough to get them to back-to-back conference championship games. So you kind of would suspect that Trey Lance could potentially, take this team to the next level because there's obviously there's some limitations on Jimmy Garoppolo's skill set that made the 49ers organization. It made John Lynch and it made a lot of those guys make that decision to put Trey Lance to be the front runner, to be the starting quarterback of the 49ers. So, obviously I think he was kind of one of those first guys that kind of impressed me there. I think another guy, and again, this is just Bills talk, but Khalil Shakir really was amazing. I think he had.
Glad you mentioned him.
Yeah, he had 6 receptions for I think around 9, either 5 or 6 receptions for around 90 yards. You saw kind of the role, kind of that insight of what they want him to be, whether it was in the slot, whether you can line him up out wide. Boise State, they line him up in the backfield. He is a very versatile player. But, again, that's just an extra, needed player that you can use in a depth and potentially just the future of the Buffalo Bills as far as the receiving core. But, you look at some of these late bloomer guys. You look at Gabriel Davis and what he was able to provide kind of as a depth player for the Bills over the last, couple years. You look at, Isaiah McKenzie, who's also one of those guys. And now you look at Khalil Shakir. He could be probably, a part of that pipeline as guys that were 4th, 5th round selections, late bloomers that can make an immediate impact. Maybe not be a starter because, again, there's Jamison Crowder. He's got to compete with Isaiah McKenzie. But, if he continues to produce at the level that he was able to have, I think that Khalil Shakir, he's going to play. And I think that, Sean McDermott is not going to deny, he's not going to deny anybody the opportunity, especially, if they can show the ability that they can produce. And that's something that Khalil Shakir was able to do. I also mentioned, Matt Hawk. Shout out to Matt Hawk, the punt god out there. I mean, when Pat McAfee, yeah,
Ariza,
oh, Riza.
Ariza,
See how to call him McAfee. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what it kind of reminded me of. I mean, look,
yeah,
I don't know. We might have to call him Matt McAfee there, but no, Matt Ariza, the punt god. Shout out to him, man, because when McAfee has to tweet about you, right? When he tweets about you, I mean, as from a punter's standpoint, I mean, Matt McAfee was he was for I want to say maybe close to about a decade the best punter in the National Football League. So when he's tweeting about you, man, that's how you know things are seriously, man. But he punted an 82-yard his first kick. Absolutely incredible. It's going to be a great competition between Hawk and Ariza to see who can win that punting job. Me personally, as soon as I saw that kick, I'm like, there's no competition. I want to please. I seen what Bojorquez can do. I seen what Hawk can do. Give me Ariza, but that's just me. I'm not the general manager. I'm not the coach or part of the management team. But no, he was one of those guys that I feel like he definitely kind of impressed me there a little bit there as well. I will also add in though Kayvon Thibodeau. Even though for the most part he didn't blow up in the stat sheet, when you watch his film, I mean, he was absolutely incredible. I mean, you kind of saw why he was, a top 5 pick. A lot of those dudes could not really handle him. For the most part, his ability to convert speed to power is absolutely insane. And again, there were some other guys, other rookies that really showcased their abilities as well. Again, you look at, for the most part, you look at, I'm trying to think of the name, Aiden Hutchinson. That's what I'm trying to think of. Aiden Hutchinson, another great showing for the Detroit Lions. Had a pretty solid game as well for the limited time that we was able to kind of see him there as well. So, there was a lot of rookies that really showcased their ability. Some other rookies that I'm still waiting to see whether we can, see if they can kind of get things right there. For the most part, Kiara Elam for the most part had a very solid game for the Bills. Sauce Gardner had a solid game for the Jets. But for the most part, we're still going to be waiting. And again, I think this is pretty much the exciting time of preseason because you're either waiting for players that, are rookies and you're very curious to see how they are. I mean, Trayvon Walker, we saw him in week 0 have his first sack, and you saw the impact that he was able to have. But you're still waiting on some other late bloomers to kind of rise up there from that rookie class, and even from the previous class, especially from last year's class. You're waiting to see them, to see what they can do. Trey Lance of the world, but those are some of the players that that kind of impressed me a little bit there. But as far as like some other takeaways, what are some other takeaways that you kind of saw from preseason?
Yeah, I would say, I just feel like this time now it's so interesting to see how teams handle things. Like on one hand, like we had, the Washington Commanders, they played most of their starters for the first half, whereas a team like the Rams, they're not playing most of their guys. A team like the Chargers, they're not playing most of their guys. The Bills, obviously, a team that we keep an eye on, real significantly. They weren't playing. I mean, Kyer Elam was almost their only starter playing for most of the day.
Yeah, he's the backup guys.
Mm-hmm. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see. The league is in such a unique spot because obviously now 17 games, at 18 weeks now, one less preseason game. So we're really in the infancy of seeing how teams handle this stuff and seeing exactly what they want to do when it comes to, taking, because I mean, you really can go about it however best fits your team. Some teams are younger. Some teams have a bunch of guys that they need to get up to speed. I think a team like Jacksonville, over the last couple of weeks, now that they have 4 preseason games, because of the Hall of Fame game that they played against the Raiders, I think having that extra game gives them a little leeway of, okay, let's play a little bit of our younger guys, earlier on now, wean them back as we, work throughout the preseason and then get to that, last couple of games and, play some of our vets. Whereas, some of these teams are like, hey, we're going to be competing for, we're looking to compete in December, January, February. We don't need to be worried about, having a guy get 5 to 10 snaps in August, So, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it continues to roll out, because I remember, growing up until last year even, where preseason game, up until 2020, I'll say, because there was no preseason in 2020. So the 2019 preseason was the last time this was the case. But where most teams had the four preseason games, with that third game was the dress rehearsal, the game where you might see those starters playing to the third quarter and things of that nature. So but that might not even be the case for some teams now. Some teams might not even have their starters play at all throughout the preseason. So again, it's just an interesting thing to see, and I think one shift that we've seen over the last couple of years, which I really like and I hope to continue seeing, is the the emphasis on joint practices rather than preseason games. Because especially like if you're going, I've always thought it was interesting to have joint practices with a team that you're about to play. But like,
Yeah.
let's say this is a team you're not going to play. You can really let it all hang out and try different things out, especially if you're not playing that team in the regular season too. So, but yeah, just going off the couple Bills notes that you said too, I thought Khalil Shakur had a phenomenal game, and I think he just continues to show he's going to be. I personally think he's wide receiver 4 in this offense. Whether McKenzie is third, whether it's Jameson Crowder's third, whatever the case is, but I think he's just shown that he can be that top guy coming off the bench, whether you play him outside or inside. He reminds me so much of like a lesser version of Diggs, just very similar skill set, very similar build. So I'm excited to see what he could do, especially when number 17 is under center. And then same with Kyrie Elam. I thought for him to be able to play as much as he did, really knowing that, hey, I'm going to get targeted a lot because I'm a rookie, but I'm really the only starter out here too. I think he had some ups and downs, but I think just his feistiness, competitiveness, and willingness to attack the ball, which is something we saw on film all spring from last season and even in 2020 when he was a first teamer in the SEC. So, I think, those guys really stood out. So how about yourself, Jerick? Are there any specific trends that you noticed or things that you really picked up on from this first full week of preseason action?
Yeah, I think you kind of like hit it like right on the nail a little bit when you kind of talked about how, some of the teams, as far as just not playing their starters go. I mean, I think 2020, I think we thought that we were going to see a lot of rustiness from a lot of these teams. Especially, just us being Bills fans, we did not think that that Josh Allen was going to come out just guns blazing, guns swinging, and throw for 400 yards and 300 yards almost every single game. But I think that teams are really I think that teams maybe now more than ever are starting to kind of realize that we don't, that if we don't kind of really need the preseason. I mean, the preseason is kind of there to really evaluate a lot of our depth pieces, to really evaluate a lot of our rookie players, to try to get them as much experience as possible, to see if other players can potentially step up and really showcase their ability so that they can make a contribution to this roster, to this team. But if you're a starter on this football team, if you've been experienced under this offense or defense or special teams or part of the special teams unit, do you really need preseason to really showcase your ability? I mean, that's just, I think 2020 for the most, and I think that 2020 just kind of showcased that way. I mean, again, you saw a lot of these guys. I mean, Justin Herbert didn't play. Tom Brady's not playing the preseason for personal reasons, but he's not playing. Aaron Rodgers didn't play in the preseason game. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of starters that did not play week 1. And it's kind of crazy because if you go back to some of the previous years, I mean, week 1 was always that was always the first week where all the starters would play, whether if it was like for the first quarter or sometimes whether it would be a half, and you'll probably never see them again. But, you at least want to see them in the first half, just in case, because you want to see, are they rusty? Do they need a little bit of more game time experience to try to get things right a little bit? But we didn't really see that for the first week of the season. So, it's going to be interesting to see if Josh Allen will McDermott risk it? Will Josh Allen play at all? Or is this going to be one of those things where they just think that Josh Allen is going to be ready? And that's really to all the quarterbacks, whether it's the Chargers, whether it's going to be to the Packers, or to any organization that feel like their starter can make that contribution to the team. I mean, the Jaguars, I believe that didn't Trevor Lawrence, I don't think he even has played yet in the preseason.
I think I believe it was
it week 1 or week 0?
I'm not sure. I think week 1 he did. He didn't in week 0. He did not in week 0. If he did in week 0, it was a series. So nothing significant.
But like you're starting to see like a lot of these players take way less snaps in the preseason, which I think is a good thing. I mean, for the most part, there's NFL former players, Hall of Famers that have said that preseason is just kind of useless. They don't think that preseason is really to be needed. Joint, if anything, again, joint practices where I think that again, I mean, there's a lot of physicality, a lot of things kind of going on there, and then you're playing them literally the following week. I mean, so maybe joint practices in a way is the future, as far as preseason goes. But for the most part, though, like I said, I will say that when you look at a quarterback like Zach Wilson for the Jets, who got injured. I mean, that's a guy that's supposed to be the future of the Jets organization as the franchise quarterback. And they wanted to play him because they wanted to see, okay, can he make any improvements? He's got to have to work with some new players. And even then, the Jets didn't even have all their starters in. I mean, Zach Wilson. I mean, they had some players in, but they didn't even have all that. They didn't really have all their starters in, so for the most part. So I just found it's just weird. It's just kind of weird to me that we're now heading towards a direction where preseason really is starting to kind of seem a little meaningless as far as what that could mean for potential starters or even guys that are trying to work their way through the rotation because. Even rookies. I mean, Kiara Elam played a majority of that game for the Buffalo Bills, but there's a lot of rookies out there that played one series that weren't quarterback, weren't in a position though that's considered to be, quote unquote high value. So that's just kind of my thoughts about it, is that, even though that yes, football's here, stuff like that, at the same time, it just seems like we're heading towards a path where the preseason is more than likely to potentially be extinct in the future. Because they don't want to risk them, especially in game time situations. I don't think they want to try to risk the injury, especially in a preseason game where you're just trying to showcase your ability, but the win means nothing.
What I personally would love to see is if the NFL switched to a model of, because they're at 18 weeks now, if they went to 19 weeks and they had 2 bye weeks, each team had 2 bye weeks, you extend things out another week. So then you're the last week of the season is, ending around President's Day, which, so the Super Bowl would be that Sunday before you end the season. Then everybody naturally has a day off the next day. But I think also too from the aspect of, like you just said, the preseason is just meaningless at this point. If you cut it down to, if you cut one more game back, most of those teams aren't going to be playing their starters to begin with, and then you go into having just guys playing those last 2 games, or that last game, that last evaluation game. I really think that would be the best way to go about it. But the way the CBA works now, that's what it is. But I mean, we can't fix it. So I guess we're just gonna have to complain about it until it gets done.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. So, and again, like I said, we got preseason in about a couple of days, as far as week 2 goes. So we'll see if more starters will have that chance to play, or is this just going to be a continuous thing throughout the entirety? But I'm just glad football is back. I mean, like I said, college football, that's my realm. I love that to death. But, obviously the Bills and NFL, I love I love that just as much. And I'm just glad that we have that back. Because for the most part, it's cured my itch. I love the USFL, but this is football. Like, this is just finally cured my itch, and I'm just ready to get, kind of get into more of that stuff. But kind of moving to our next transition, we're going to talk a little bit about college football. Some of the AP rankings finally got released. It's been nothing but projections for USA polls, ESPN polls, all that stuff, but the AP polls are out. And, for the most part, top 25 reactions. I kind of talked about last week with Brock, but Kyrie, just to kind of give your reactions about kind of what you think about it and, just overall your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton of huge surprises, especially at the top. The one team that that did catch my eye was Clemson. I think people forget, obviously DJ Uiagalelei had a tough 2021 season, but people forget that Clemson won 10 games last year. And, Clemson was, ACC title game contestant as well. So, I know, the fall from grace a little bit, has been going on there, and maybe they're not the team they were in the Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence eras, but I think that team is still ready to go. But I mean, at the same time too, we'll see. Excuse me, just how quickly they can adjust, and we'll see how they look now that Brent Venables is down in Oklahoma. So I mean, it'll just be intriguing to see. I think another team that really stood out to me personally as well was Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma, obviously losing Lincoln Riley, obviously losing Caleb Williams and Mario Williams as well, the receiver.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of change there at Norman, but at the same time too, the core of that program is still there at the heart of it. And I think what's left of the Big 12 before it disperses in a couple of years. I think Oklahoma has shown to still be the top team in that conference, and continues to show it not only on the field but in the recruiting wars as well. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out for them. And I think one dark horse team I'm interested to check out is Miami. Now that Mario Cristobal is down there, Van Dyke under center. For those of you out there who don't realize, he's one of the best quarterback prospects in the country, and a pretty loaded quarterback class at that too. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Now under Mario Cristobal's leadership. So just for you, Jarek, just thoughts on the AP. I know my Buckeyes. They're up there, and had a real big injury impact. Could impact things for them take place today. So that's not ideal, but just thoughts on the top 25 list as well.
Yeah, like you said before, I'm not really too surprised with the rankings. I know there's a couple teams in here that that's been kind of talked about. Texas being probably the number one team that a lot of people think that should be in the top 25. Talked to a lot of Texas people, in the past, and just kind of give their thoughts about it. And they're, for the most part, a lot of people are hyped on Texas. A lot of people are, they really truly do believe that this could be a team that could potentially make it to the Big 12 title game. When you look at Steve Sarkisian and everything he's kind of worked with, he brought in, some of our Alabama assistant coaches like, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks, special teams defensive coordinator. Pretty much, you look at, PK, Coach PK on the defensive side of the ball. But then you look at their skill position players, Isaiah Nair, who got hurt, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, but he got hurt. But, you look at some of their skill positions, Jatavian Sanders, Bijan Robinson's there. Killian Robinson can also still contribute as well. Quinn Ewers, for the most part, is probably going to be one of the biggest storylines, is what can he do, with this Texas team, because you're talking about a player that was the former number one overall recruit in the nation. And he transferred from Ohio State. He transferred from Ohio State to go right to Texas, and he's going to be a big storyline, especially when week 2 comes when they play Alabama. But for the most part, Texas is probably one of those schools that a lot of people think should be on this list. But when you also take a look at some of the deficiencies of the team, and you look at the defense, it's a big question mark. We don't know who their pass rushers are going to be. They don't really have any impactful defensive linemen. Keandre Colbert is the only person. A lot of people believe Byron Murphy can be that dude, but I'm not too sure. Their secondary, for the most part, still a question mark. Linebacking play is still a question mark. Offensive line is a big question mark because they're most likely going to play at least 3 freshmen on that offensive line now. So that's a young team. That's a very, very young team that potentially could struggle again. But Texas is one of those schools that probably didn't make it. That a lot of people are kind of surprised about it. But just going on the other rankings, I think you hit right on the nail on the head. Clemson, you can make an argument that maybe they should move up maybe one more spot, only because if they can get that quarterback situation down, that team, instead of that team going 10-3, that team could easily could have lost one game in conference play. They could have won at least one game, maybe 1 or 2 games last year. If they just would have had a quarterback. DJ Uiagalelei, for the most part, he dealt with a lot of issues. For the most part, with his family, just personal issues, and obviously he couldn't get things on the field right, but. For the most part, if they can just get that situation down, work on his mechanics, live up to his potential, because in high school, one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen at St. John Bosco when he was playing the Trinity League with against Bryce Young. So I'm very interested to see what he could potentially do with that offense, because they do have skill position players. They have the players there. They got Bo Collins, one of those notable names. They have a really solid receiving core as far as their talent. Running back wise, they have the running backs, no question about it. It's just, again, it's the quarterback position, the offensive line. No one will question their defense. That arguably is the top defense in the nation with Brian Bresee, Murphy, Xavier Thomas, and for the most part Tyler Davis. No one's going to question their defensive mentality, but it's just that position. But Clemson's one of those names that could sneak up and potentially be a national championship contender. Notre Dame and Texas A&M are probably the teams that I just have the biggest question mark about. Because Notre Dame, I understand with Coach Williams being there, I get it completely. You look at the talent that's being assessed there; it's one of the most talented teams that Notre Dame's probably ever had, and still got to give a lot of credit to Brian Kelly and what he's able to do. And Notre Dame, obviously, right now, they're number 2 in the nation. They're number 2 in the nation right now in recruiting, so they're doing things right. But I don't know if they're worthy of being a top 5 school. I think they're top 10. I don't know if they're top 5 yet. A&M is one of those schools. If anybody, I think that A&M is way overrated. I think that they're really judging, and I think I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any of the A&M fans or the A&M community, but we do this all the time. Whenever Alabama gets beat, it seems like the team that beats Alabama gets a lot more favoritism heading into the next year, only because of their base of that reputation. I look at Texas A&M, and yes, there's no question Jimbo Fisher is doing a phenomenal job when it comes to recruiting. Yes, there's no question to doubt that Jimbo Fisher and the momentum that swing in their favor, I can completely understand exactly where they're coming from. But at the same time, I've never seen a team that lost so much production from based off of last year. And I'm not, again, Georgia lost, they had 15 players drafted, granted. But Georgia, for the most part, at least has reason. They've shown the ability to be consistent while losing that talent and still produce at a very, very high level. A&M hasn't shown that ability yet. And when I look at A&M and I look at their front and I look at their best players, which mainly were on the defensive side of the ball, they lost 95% of their sack production, which, again, A&M had, I think, over 39 or 40 sacks. They lose 95% of that production. So a lot of those players were players that either that have never played before, that had a very, very small contribution as far as the rotation, or they're simply, again, they're just simply inexperienced. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball, you lose 2 of your best offensive linemen. Yes, you got a couple guys that are really good players, but you lose 2 of your best players, including Kenyon Green. Your quarterback situation is still questionable, because even with Zach Kozlado or Haynes King, you still went 8-4. And then we still have question marks about your skill position, your receiving position. I mean, yes, you have Evan Stewart, who's a true freshman, by the way, who a lot of people say could be the best receiver in the nation, but he's still a true freshman, and he's still going to have to go through his growing pains. So the quarterback situation, based off your spring game performance, was bad. Max Johnson's there. Yes, you have Greg. Yes, you have some experience, a little bit of experience. But at best case scenario, I don't see anybody in this roster, at least at the quarterback level, that can elevate this football team. I think a serviceable quarterback at best is what's there for you. So your running game, even though you have Akini or Achin, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, but you have Akini who's there. But the offensive line's a question mark. Quarterback position's a question mark. The receiver's a question mark. The defense is definitely going to be a question mark since you lost 6 players in your front 7. You lose 95% of your sack production. Your secondary is the best asset of the team in general. So I just don't understand where this generalization that A&M is now officially a top 10 with a top 6 school in the nation. And then all of a sudden they're just that, because when I see rankings and I see that they're number 6, that tells me that they think that A&M and Alabama, that they're not that far apart. And I just don't understand that when Alabama, who has one of the most experienced teams as far as their talent, as far as just the collection of production, Georgia, who has probably possibly the best talent out of any of the schools in the nation, who's one of the best coaching staff, and then I look at an A&M school that went 8-4, that lost the majority of their production, yet they're still in the top 10, top 6. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. I mean, I look at teams like USC, I look at teams like Michigan, I look at teams even like Oklahoma, that I think I would give them the edge before A&M. But that's just kind of my reaction to that. Out of all the teams in that poll that I probably have the biggest disagreement with, it's A&M at number 6.
No doubt, and I can definitely respect that. And and it's I was going to bring up an issue that A&M and Notre Dame that we'll both see, with both squads early on. Obviously when you have rankings that high, there's a lot of expectations, but both programs have schedules where we're going to find out real soon just how good they are. Obviously the first 2 weeks of the season for A&M against Sam Houston State and App State, those are 2 games that they should win handily. But from September 17th on, A&M plays Miami, like University of Miami, then Arkansas, who's also ranked. Then they go to Mississippi State, go to Bama for probably the most anticipated game, SEC game especially of the season. You know, taking on South Carolina, who should be an improved team, especially now that
Spencer
Spencer
Rattler.
Rattler's down there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then they wrap that stretch up with Ole Miss at home, and then Florida at home, followed by traveling to Auburn on the day after Veterans Day. So, I mean, again, we will see just how good of a team this A&M squad is, and again, have a lot of respect for Jimbo Fisher, and I think he's definitely one of the best coaches in all of college football, and I think he's probably even underrated at this point. But at the same time, too, we'll definitely see just how good they are, and again, too, same with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they opened up with Ohio State, obviously, but they've also got USC and Clemson on their schedule. So again, another team that with a ton of expectations, and I think with Notre Dame even, I think they've got the makings of a really good team. I just don't know how over the top they'll be because the quarterback position is still they've got a few guys that contributed last year that'll be back in the fold this year. And they might even do a system of, hey, ride with the hot hand, things of that nature. So I know Notre Dame is a team that's got a lot of talent. I really like their tight end, Michael Mayer. He's going to be one of the best. Like you said, I think A&M, you know, if they're really going to live up to that, we'll see real soon. We'll know just how good of a team they are by the end of September. Um, and the hits just keep on coming because the SEC West is no joke. So we'll definitely see if they can live up to this preseason ranking.
Yeah, man, and speaking of, again, we got some Georgia fans. My boy, MI for the most part, huge Georgia fan. I know he has his Georgia Bulldogs making the national championship and potentially taking it off, which they have the roster to they definitely have the roster. And again, even though they lose a lot, and I mean they lose a lot of players and lose a lot of production, they've proven over the years that they can replicate that they continue to just to copy it. They can replicate what they've been doing in the past. So I think that for the most part, Kirby Smart, Georgia with the talent they have been, and again, everyone talks about the people that are missing on their defense. Their offense, I think, is going to be way better than what they were last year. Their tight ends, for the most part, we've seen a lot of 12, 13 personnel for their tight ends. Again, we talk about Notre Dame and Iowa and Wisconsin being tight end. I mean, for the most part, Georgia can potentially have that claim, at least being now. I mean, again, you look at Brock, you look at Darnell Washington, you look at Eric Gilbert. I mean, Oscar Delp is even getting a lot of praise. They have the offensive line's ridiculous. The running back core with Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, who I think could be the best running back. James could be better than even James Cook was as far as when he came out. Him and Zamir White. So it's gonna be fun watching them kind of play. And again, you look at the experience, the receivers. Their defense is going to be really, really good. I don't know if it's going to be as great as it was last year, but that defense is definitely going to be really good. And again, if their offense can take that next step, especially with Todd Monk controlling it, I mean, there's who's to say that Georgia can't potentially go back to being a national champion, go back to back. So we'll see what they're able to do about that. But kind of switching gears a little bit now to Bryce, LeBron James, Bronny. Because that was actually a very exciting moment, man, to see, LeBron James, what he was able to do, see his sons play at the same time, especially at a high stage, at that high of a level. So kind of, give me your thoughts about that, and then we can quickly just, kind of dissect about that a little bit.
It just makes me feel old, man. Like, I remember when Bronny James was a kid, when he was born. I remember when Bryce was born as well. And for them to, Bryce is, I believe, a freshman or sophomore now in high school, while Bronny's a senior.
Yeah.
And to think, both kids are legitimate Division I prospects. First of all, man, that dunk in traffic. I can't emphasize enough for Bronny to have that dunk in traffic. Like, that is, you don't see that. You really just don't see stuff like that, And I know he's got great, lineage, and he's trying to live up to his dad's name. But the guy, I mean, the kid is really. I think when you have a famous kid like both Bronny and Bryce, but specifically Bronny because obviously he has his dad's name and he's the oldest. He's been in the spotlight longer. I think a lot of people do want to see him fail, and I think he was at a place at Sierra Canyon where he didn't need to be the star. When you have oh my goodness, uh I'm drawing a blank on the kid's name. The kid was his mom was dating Drake at some point.
Oh, he's in college now, right?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But so, but regardless, like he didn't necessarily need to be, the man there. He had Imani Bates. I
Imani
don't know
Bates.
why.
Yep.
Yeah, Imani Bates. I don't know why I was drawing a blank on that, but to see a kid like him, and then Bronny was just more of a role player, and I think that discouraged a lot of people. But even just seeing reports today, Bronny's most likely to commit to Oregon. They've shown the most interest in him, but he's still got Ohio State and some other schools that are interested in him as well. So I think that's been amazing to see because again, it's like with LaMelo Ball. It's like with, so many of these famous kids, who, end up carving a path out for themselves. I hate to see that people hating on them because, first of all, they are kids, first and foremost. Bronny James, I don't even know if he's driving yet. You know what I mean? Like the kid, he's just being a high school kid. He's playing ball, having fun, living in California now. So I definitely wish him well. But the craziest thing to me is seeing Bryce because, I think he was always the underdog. He was always the one that they weren't sure of. He was a shorter, stouter kid and everything. And, he also plays basketball too. But just seeing how he's grown up. He's got some size to him. I mean, he's not LeBron's height, but he's not too far off from him now. And for him to only be 15 and, knowing he's probably the best shooter in the family right now, and that's saying something because, obviously Bron's been more of a scoring attacker, get to the lane type guy. He's improved his jumper. But Bronny's, even been a pretty high level shooter, catch and shoot guy. So, but Bryce, he's shown that he's got all those skills and, he's still got the most. He's the silly putty right now. They can just keep molding him still, So I'm really interested to see what ends up happening for both kids, But again, an amazing moment, especially for LeBron to watch LeBron James watch his sons play basketball together on the same team in LeBron's shoes, like just for him. I couldn't even imagine, that had to have been the proudest dad moment he could have ever experienced.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of crazy because I think a lot of people now think that Bryce is probably going to be the best one out of all of them. I mean, that he could be the best one because he had a major growth spurt. I mean, he was
major,
like at 5'7" to like 6'1", and then he was 6'1", and I think he's now 6'6". So
yes,
he had a major growth, and it's crazy because not even that long, like 5-6 months ago, was shorter than Bronny. Now all of a sudden he's just like boom, he's like there now. So it's that's scary. I mean, that's really scary. And Bronny's he's not a short guy himself. I mean, Bronny I think is 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
But I think he's more projected to be a point guard, definitely more of a classic point guard. While Bryce is potentially going to be more, he's going to be the forward of the family. That's for sure as far as the two. But I mean, it was a great moment to see. I mean, like I said, it's just like you said, man. I mean, I'm 23, man. I feel old. Like I feel incredibly old. I'm like, dude, it was not that long ago, man. I saw Bryce in diapers. It wasn't that long ago that I just saw him in diapers. And now you look at you look at everything now. I mean, these kids are in high school. I mean, Bronny's about to enter for senior of high school. He's about to go to college. I mean, it's incredible to see. LeBron James always said that he's not going to retire and until he plays that 1 year with his son, with one of them son. So it's insane because we're literally coming close to it. I mean, we're about a couple years away from that. If if Bryce continues to improve his game, and if he can work his way to being an NBA player, I mean, we're a couple years away from it. So, it would be I'm just imagining that moment, and I'm like, dude, that would be absolutely incredible if LeBron could just accomplish that. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of LeBron James or his play, but again, I was the same thing with Kobe. But at the same time, again, you can't help but appreciate, just how good of a father LeBron James is, and just kind of a role model a lot of people can look up to, not just from a person that's on, that's on the court, but off the court. Especially, you're looking at a guy that has worked with his sons, and it's incredible to see. Again, one of the proudest moments, and something that we don't really kind of talk about that much, is you look at the head of the Ball family, of how he said that he knew that all three of his sons were one day going to play in the NBA. And you look at how it is, they all at some point in their life played in the NBA. And it's just crazy because watching the Ball brothers play at high school, and one of the best basketball teams I've ever seen from a high school perspective, all at Chino Hills, all of them now played. One of them is the G League, but he did he did play in the NBA for a short time. But Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, two of the most exciting point guards in the league. It's just that's just one of those moments that I think can come close to it. And LeBron James, obviously, I mean, that I can't imagine the emotions that were just running through his head when he saw two of his. He's going to see his sons play at the same high school, play at the same team. And obviously, you look at the crowd that was there. I mean, you met over thousands of people that were there just to see their kids play. It's absolutely incredible, man. But yeah, man, it's just great for the kids. And obviously, we got the whole thing with NIL and the NIL value that's going on. According to On3, it's just, we're about to enter a different age, man. We're about to enter a different era. But yeah, man, it was just overall an overall cool moment, not just from LeBron James, but definitely from a father perspective. That's just something you definitely have to respect.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like you said too, I think moments like these too are also like, it's also like, man, like, appreciate things while we have them, because who knows when Bryce and Bronny will play together again. But also thinking about, like you said, Bryce or Bronny, LeBron wants to play with Bronny. Hopefully, as as LeBron's winding his career down, and it's weird to even think that, because LeBron's career started. I was starting third grade when he was drafted and was his first season in the NBA. So it's just crazy to think that much time has passed. But got it. Like I said, you got to appreciate things while we have them, because I think so many times when it comes to LeBron specifically, we look at, oh, well, is he the GOAT? Oh, him and Jordan. Oh, him and Kobe even. For a long time, that was really the early part of his career was, who's better, him or Kobe. So like, there's just always been such a narrative around him. I just think sometimes we need to step back and just appreciate things, especially when it's greatness, and it's right in front of you. So.
Yeah, man. And I think too. I think the closest thing I think we ever kind of seen to this was definitely Michael Jordan with his kids. Now I wasn't around to see it that much, or I can't even remember that much. But I can. Both his sons actually played in college. They didn't make it to the pros, but they made it to they played college ball. But I just can't imagine the pressure when you're playing under that name, like, to essentially maybe arguably the greatest player of all time. I mean, I can't imagine that amount of pressure. So, like I said, there's a lot of people that's, like you said before, watching the downfall of both sons, and which is kind of crazy because they're kids. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I don't know why you would wish bad things on anybody, especially when you don't know them at a personal level. I can never understand that. But for the most part, I wish them well. I wish them well. I hope they can. I hope they do make it. I hope that we do have the opportunity to see LeBron, the 40-year-old son LeBron, but play with one of his sons. That would be. That would be one of the craziest sports moments. And we've seen, stuff like this happen before. I mean, I think that the Griffeys are definitely a prime example of that. But I think that, again, it would be an incredible moment to see. And yeah, man, I'm just excited, man. I'm just excited just overall to see what Bryce Young, not Bryce Young, but Bryce James and Bronny, what they can do at Sierra. They're still at Sierra Canyon.
Yeah, they are. They're still there. And that's the thing. LeBron has said that on his show, The Shop. That's something that he wants. He wants to be the Griffeys of basketball, where he gets to play with at least Bronny. I mean, if he's playing with Bryce, man, I mean, I don't know. I
That
mean,
would be it.
LeBron
We've never
could
seen
do it.
that happen before in sport. It's in any sport.
Yeah. I mean, because that would be, at that point, that's like season 25, 26 for
That
LeBron.
would be
You know, like,
insane.
it'd be crazy. So, you know, shout out to Tari Love. I do think it's safe to say LeBron's top 12 to 15 at the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I just know. In my opinion, I think he's top 5 minimum, but that's just me.
Yeah, for sure. Personally as well.
But yeah, we got a lot of time left. Yeah, this is one of those shows we just got by really fast. But I guess we can talk about a couple things. Definitely I don't. Again, I was hoping we could have finished this before we talked about it, but we'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's KD and Kyrie Irving, because obviously those guys once again are in the headlines. Kevin Durant again, once again is requesting his trade. Which personally, from a Nets fan, do it. Let him trade him. Let him go. Let both of them go. Honestly. But he didn't really bother me that much. It was the Kyrie statement that bothered me the most, where he said that he wants to play a minimum of 60 games because he thinks that it's inhumane to play more than 60 games. To play at least 60 games. But it's just I find that funny to believe, because I'm like, Kyrie, man, you haven't played 60 games in 3 years. You've played 29 games, 54 games, another 29 games. You've played in a combined 8 playoff games in 2 years. So I don't know. I don't know with Kyrie anymore, man. I mean, I talked about this with my guy Moody about this before, man. But it's like, and Moody's a huge Kyrie fan, but he was like, dude, I'm done. Like I feel like a lot of Kyrie fans are honestly jumping on that bandwagon, because it's like, man, we're trying to defend you, man, but you're not really helping your kids. You're not really helping your situation. It sounds like to me that he's unmotivated. I feel like he doesn't want to play basketball anymore. Honestly, I feel like he does not want to play anymore. I feel like he signed a contract. I feel like he signed a contract that I don't know. And it's like, even thinking about it and talking about it, it's like, you signed the contract, but then you don't want to play the game anymore. So it's kind of like, what's your motivation? Like, why are you? Is it for money? Is it for you to kind of just? Is it for publicity? I don't know what it is, but he added a part of the streaming contract where he says that he can play, he can stream, and he can do a bunch of stuff like this on the side note. But it's insane to me that now he wants a minimum to play 60 games, and that's it for him. Whether if it's and again, this is not just regular season, this is postseason play. Yeah. He's talking about postseason play as well. So I don't know. I just like, Kyrie, just kind of like, let me know how you feel about it, because I'm losing my mind just thinking about. I've been thinking about this for about a week now, but it's just incredible to me. It's incredible.
It's funny that was like that you bring this up, because like when I first saw it, I almost was just like of course he said that, like literally of course he would suggest that. I don't know. I just, like you said, I do think he's unmotivated to play. I think one thing with him too is that he's very much, if it's not on my terms, I'm not doing it. It just feels that way with Kyrie, and like, it's unfortunate because, again, he's one of the most gifted. He's by far one of the most gifted basketball players I've ever seen in my life. Like, just in terms of handling, finishing, shooting. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's like a shorter version of KD. I mean, he's just an offensive machine. Like, you can't really guard him one-on-one. I mean, the guy's he could give you 50 at any moment. But I just think his personality, just his, his unwillingness to really adhere to rules. And again, I'm not saying you should be all establishment and we gotta always do right by the team. I'm not saying that, but like you said, he signed a contract. You're supposed to be playing this contract out. But not only that, and because on one hand, I do understand where he's coming from in terms of I do think 82 games is a lengthy season. I really do. But to suggest that you only play up to 60 games, so you're telling me you're willing to miss a quarter of your team's season just because you don't feel like it? Like, I don't know. It just is weird. That's just weird. But, I mean, I really don't even think I can add much more to that about Kyrie. Now, in terms of KD situation, I do think that it's got to be frustrating for him because he did obviously he reiterated he wanted to be traded. He's had to go out and even squash some of the rumors talking about he would retire if the Nets don't trade him. I think we're in a weird space too because yeah, there are a lot of rumors, there's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of truth to things, but it's also like, the internet sometimes may take something and run with it. Um, and maybe his requests of going to the Celtics and the Heat and the Sixers are true, maybe that is the case. But I also just think too, like, again, at this point, I know it's got to be frustrating for him, but the Nets have been put in a tough position. But on the flip side of it too, I don't necessarily feel bad for the Nets because they've literally made this bed. You gave, obviously, KD's an all-time great, and Kyrie's a Hall of Famer as well. But KD really has been the one with the stamp of approval on most things. You gave him so much power, and when when you decided to take that power away, he was like, "Wait, what are we doing?" And then also you combine the fact that, like, just the fact that, I mean, they've not only acquiesced to everything that he's requested essentially, but just the fact that this situation has become so public and it's been so finger pointing-y, and Joe Tsai tweeting out, "Oh, um, Sean Marks and Steve Nash have my support." And it's just a lot of back and forth at this point. And, like, you know, the situation obviously is not over, but I feel as though and again, when if and when KD's traded, like, that'll be shockwaves regardless. But I just feel like they've kind of missed the boat on things. I mean, again, you could trade him at any point, but I just feel like they would have been better off trading. They would have been better off trading him in June or July when he requested it, and then trying to really just build out what the team is going to be looking like, what the projection for the team will be like for this year and beyond, because now they're in no man's land. You're going to go into the season with possibly KD on the roster, but he's disgruntled and, is might hold out. But then you also have the situation with Kyrie where who even knows what type of guy you're going to get each day. So I don't know. It really is it's a perplexing situation, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I guess my final word about it, and before we can kind of move on and get to some of the fans' questions, is that just trade them, get rid of, like, whatever they want, do it. Whatever you have to do, just do it. Because I said this years ago when we signed Kyrie Irving. I thought that was the biggest mistake we could have done, because we had a thing. We had D'Angelo Russell, we had Denwood, we had Allen, we had a young core that the Nets were building, and we got rid of all of it because. And I can't blame our ownership, and I can't blame the organization for getting Kyrie Irving, because ultimately at some point you had Kyrie, KD, and James Harden on the same team. And when you think about those three, that's three top 10 players on one squadron, and you're trying to create you're trying to recreate the Miami Heat. You're trying to recreate the Golden State Warriors, where you're thinking, okay, now we can compete, now we can win championships. And the fact that you couldn't even get past the second round.
They couldn't even win a playoff game this year.
They didn't win exactly. They got swept by the Celtics. But the most common thing is that James Harden didn't really care that much. He's in Atlanta doing his thing, chicken wings and all that. Kyrie Irving, for the most part, always hurt. And Kevin Durant is always got to be the one that simply just takes the blame. He's the one that's more consistent, that's always playing between them. And again, all three of them, they played, I think, a combined really less. They played less than 20 games together.
It's like 13 games, I think it was.
Insane. And that includes playoff games.
Yeah.
Like, that's absolutely insane, man. Mm-hmm. But it is what it is. In my opinion, they just trade them both. Whatever you can get. Whatever it's swapping players, whether it's getting picks, something. But at this point, the Nets are in rebuilding mode. They are in rebuilding mode right now. And so it is what it is. I would just get rid of them both, man. But I guess we're just going to answer the fans' questions before we probably just get out of here, man. I know that a lot of these guys, they want to try to get back into the college football scope. So I'll just, he wants to talk a little bit about some Georgia football, a little bit about there, man. But I guess I just kind of make my last point, I guess, for Georgia is that, again, their offense is going to be really good. I think their offense is going to be a lot better than what it was, again, these guys are going to be running a lot of 12, a lot of 13 personnel like we saw in that spring game. Oscar Dell, again, you look at, we just talked about, Kyrie talked about Michael Mayer. Brock, he could be the best one, honestly. Just absolutely incredible what he was able to produce. And then Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert is, again, a transfer from LSU that, if you look at his talent level, is just as good as far as talent-wise, could be a little bit even better than what Kyle Pitts was when he came out. So that's going to be exciting. It's just the thing, and the one question mark is, can Stetson Bennett, can he elevate the squadron? Can he elevate the team? That's my biggest question mark with Stetson Bennett. Can he elevate? Because Stetson Bennett is extremely serviceable. Extremely serviceable. You know what you're going to give Stetson Bennett, just like how you know who you were going to get from Jake Fromm. You're going to get a guy that's going to throw for 2,900 to maybe barely 2,000 yards. He's going to make explosive plays, throwing it. He's going to make explosive plays. Great accuracy as far as his ability to throw the football down the field. But again, it's taking it to the next level, and I can understand why a lot of Georgia fans have that excitement about Stetson Bennett, because he helped win that team the national title. But again, did they win that game because of Stetson Bennett, or did they win that game because of other various reasons? They won that game because of other various reasons, not because Stetson Bennett took the game and he put it on his shoulders. Yes, Stetson Bennett made some really, really good plays, and all the credit in the world has to go to him. But now you're going to be asking Stetson Bennett, and Kirby Smart even said this, that they know they can't do what they did last year as far as letting the defense take on all the heat, all the pressure, because they were ready. They were prepared. They had the defense that can do it. A once-in-a-lifetime type of defense with that type of talent. But now you're kind of, even though Georgia's going to have a good defense, you're still going to be a little bit in rebuilding mode, where now you have to see if a lot of these guys that were backup players, they have to now step up to the plate. So now you have to wonder, for the offensive standpoint, that Stetson Bennett, can he be the one to elevate that squadron? So it's interesting to see. And again, I can understand the excitement, but I am curious to see what Georgia can do, in the future about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's you bring up a phenomenal point, because at the end of the day, whether it was Zamir White, James Cook, George Pickens, just the amount of talent that Stetson Bennett had around him was phenomenal. And thankfully he's got some of those big guys up front still to protect him. But they're going to be bringing in a new group, and again, this is a very talented group still. But I think the thing we got to just keep an eye out for is just that, like you said, can he carry that offense? Can he elevate those guys? Can he, put the team on the back when they're down by 2 touchdowns late in the second half? So we'll see about that. But I think another thing that Tari brought back up is, can Marcus Freeman shock the world by beating Ohio State? I just don't know. I get it. I think Notre Dame is one of the most talented teams in the country, and I think Coach Freeman's one of the best coaches in the country. But it just gives me a feel of one of those games where I think Notre Dame will hang around tough. I think the fact that they've got some veterans back, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The side of the ball that Coach Freeman will be directly most connected to. I think that'll at least keep them in it. But I think Ohio State pulls away at the end. You have a quarterback like C.J. Stroud coming back. You got Smith and Jigba coming back. Marvin Harrison Jr. coming back. That's just a lot of firepower. And I think it'll just be tough for Notre Dame to necessarily keep up. I do think their defense is good enough to be able to slow Ohio State's offense down a bit. But I just don't think their offense can produce enough firepower. So, we'll see what happens, come September. Let me see. What date is that now?
The 3rd, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll see what happens come September 3rd. But, it should be a knockdown, drag-out battle. But, I do expect the Buckeyes to come out on top in that one.
Yeah, and I think for Notre Dame, I think the biggest question is not just with what Marcus Freeman can have the ability to do, but it's Notre. I mean, Notre Dame. One thing that they've struggled with is beating the top premier teams. I mean, Notre Dame. Even though they've been pretty consistent, at least by the turn of the decade, they've been pretty consistent. But their biggest flaw is beating those top premier teams. There's always a question mark. They did beat Michigan when in 2018 when Michigan was on that revenge tour thing. But even Michigan had their own criticisms that year. Clemson, for the most part, when they beat Clemson, DJ was the quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was out because of COVID. That was during that COVID year. But when you take a look at their top premier teams in the competition, I mean, you look at what happened last year. I mean, Notre Dame lost one game in the regular season, and they lost to Cincinnati. Then they went up against Oklahoma State in the bowl game. They went up against Oklahoma State in the New Year's Six bowl game. They lost to, and I believe that was the Fiesta Bowl. I believe they lost in the Fiesta Bowl, but they lost to Notre Dame. Sorry, they lost to Oklahoma State. Sorry, they lost to Oklahoma State, who was the Big 12 champion. You look at years back. I mean, Notre Dame, they lost to Bama in the national title game. They lost to Bama in the college football playoff game. They lost to Clemson embarrassingly, not just in the conference championship game, but they lost to them in the playoff game in 2018 when Notre Dame was undefeated. So it's the top premier schools that when Notre Dame have to play against, they lose. They can't. They just have not shown the ability to compete on a consistent basis with these squadrons. So again, Marcus Freeman, this is probably the most talented Notre Dame squadron that we've seen, even under Brian Kelly. But even when Brian Kelly, and he's even admitted this, Notre Dame has had restrictions as far as the recruiting because of the academic standard that Notre Dame has, and just the accept. I mean, it's extremely hard for Notre Dame to get accepted to that particular program. I mean, it's extremely hard. I mean, you can make an argument Notre Dame should be right there as far as with the Ivy League schools, Stanford in that conversation. I mean, there's, where Notre Dame, and this has been the kind of the rumors that they're scoping out for conferences, they're looking for who has the best academics, which is why a lot of people consider them to go to the Big Ten because of schools like Michigan and Northwestern being a part of that conference academically. So, I think that even though Notre Dame is extremely talented at the same time, there is going to be a question mark going into that game. Well, you got Ohio State. You have a USC squadron now that's extremely talented. You have Clemson. You have three teams, and two of them will probably be premier squadrons. Can they have the ability to compete at a high level? And that's just something that we're just going to have to wait and find out about.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all going to be fun. I think that's the one thing about college football that's so unique is that, you can literally flip your roster and turn it over just with one recruiting class. So I think just the fact that Coach Freeman was able to come into a pretty ready-made roster and one that he's obviously helped construct himself. He's one of the best recruiters in the country. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how, the team plays under his leadership. But again, they do have the talent at least to compete. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so I'll answer about a couple quick questions, and then we'll probably just get out of here myself. So he mentioned a little bit earlier, do I think Georgia will have a better offense than Alabama? I don't think they're going to have a better – I don't think that they're going to, as far as, having, a bunch of more yards, I don't think they'll be more better. But I will say this. I think Georgia has the potential of being a little bit more efficient than Bama. As far as – I think that they can have that ability only because their offensive line is better than Bama's. The receiving core is just as experienced. I don't think they're better than Bama's, but they're just as experienced, which means that they know their roles, they know their limitations, they know exactly what Tom Monken wants them to do since they've already had that year of experience, and that's Aiden Mitchell with McConkey there, and obviously with they have a receiver coming back. I forgot what his name was, and I forgot what his name is. It's like escaping the tip of my tongue, but they have a lot of experience at that receiving position, so. That's why I think they could be a little more efficient. They know exactly what to do, especially under that offense. Again, the offensive line, the running game, Stetson Bennett, his role and his ability, which is, again, I'm curious to see what Stetson Bennett, can he really elevate this Georgia offense? Because even if he doesn't, let's say it's just he's what he was last year. It was good enough to win a national title, and that's most likely you're going to see 2,900 yards, 25 or 20-some touchdowns with a low interception rate. So he's going to be extremely efficient. So I think that Georgia has that potential of being more efficient than Bama, but I don't think they're going to be they're going to be that much better than Bama. But I think if you're in Georgia's case, even with the offense that Tom Monken's working with, it's as long as they have the defense, as long as they have a top unit, a top defense, they're going to be absolutely fine there. Again, Tyree asked, are we sleeping on Tennessee? I don't think, again, Tennessee's going to be a good squadron. But I think that we're blowing this a little out of proportion that, as far as Tennessee being a top 15, there have been some polls where they have them in the top 10. I think we're blowing that out of proportion a little bit. I like Hooker a lot. I like the job that Josh Heupel's doing at Tennessee. But I think that we're blowing. I think I need to see a little bit more. I think their offense is going to be really, really good. I don't know about their defense, because their defense was okay. But, there wasn't, a lot of those huge impactful players that made that defense what it was last year are now gone. So I need to see a little bit more on that defense. I think offensively they have that they have that potential. I think that they're underrated a little bit, but I think that they are a team that I just don't think that they're top 10 or top 15 level. That's a top 25 squadron that I think the AP nailed right. And I think the last thing, and we'll talk about it, is Florida and LSU. They're not in the top 25 poll, which is kind of shocking. But Florida, I can understand them because they did go 4-8 last year. I mean, they did go 4-8. Dan Mullen pretty much ruined that program. They're in rebuilding stage right now. I like Anthony Richardson. I like his potential, but I just don't see the key pieces on the offensive side of the ball, whether if it's the offensive line or the skill position players at receiver, to really help them out. Defensively, I think they can be a little bit better than what it was. I like the defensive line a little bit more, especially with Brenton Cox being there too as the returning sack leader. But I'm just not that sure about it. LSU, I think, is a top 25 squadron. They will possibly have one of the best defensive lines in the nation. Their quarterback play, I think, is the only question mark I have. I think their running back play is going to be solid. Offensive line is going to be a little experience, but their defense is going to be a lot better than what it was last year. And granted, LSU dealt with a lot of injuries. So I think that possibly has the possibility of being the top 25 squadron. But I think that's going to be up for us, man. I think for the most part, I think we're actually, again, we got to end a little bit because we got to let some of the other content creators come on a little bit. But yeah, man, Kyrie, man, any final thoughts before we hop out of here?
No, that's it for me, man. It's always good to be able to check in, and it's exciting that we're a few weeks away from all this stuff really going. Obviously preseason for both NFL and college football, so can't wait to see what happens in September.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. But like I said, man, we're itching. We got it. We have it here. Preseason's here. College football. I know again we got a lot of college football guys here. That's from my channel. These guys are itching for it. We've been talking about the same stuff over and over and over again. So that's just around the corner. But yeah, fall season's almost here, and then in October will be basketball, and then again hockey will be coming. So we're about to go back to in sports definition. We're about to go back to normalcy. So I'm excited to see where everything kind of goes there, man. But yeah, man, we want to appreciate everyone that stopped by the chat. As always, man, I am Tyree for the most part. Brock, he was in the chat for a little bit. Once again, shout out to Apex, big part of the Fambase community. And yeah, that's gonna do it for us, man. But yeah, like I said, this is Jerick Hall, aka Jan Sports with Kari Demos, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, Fambase Sports. Join Jerick Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.